$1, 1770. This money has been in circulation since the mid-18th century. They were used in all 13 colonies of North America. Depending on the location, they were called either dollars or shillings. Banknotes were constantly counterfeited, which forced the state to constantly strengthen the protection of the currency. Real leaves were used to print the bills. They created a more complex pattern. In those days, counterfeiting money was punishable by execution. $50, 1779. This is what the American dollar looks like, issued by the Continental Congress as the first national currency. The design differs little from colonial money. An image of an unfinished pyramid appeared on the back of the bill. It cost the government $240 million to issue the bills, which led to monstrous inflation. By 1781, the money was completely worthless. $5, 19th century. Some stability was not restored until 1792, when the Coinage Act was signed. The printing of banknotes was tight, as their value depended entirely on the institution in which they were printed. It turned out that for a $5 bill issued in a Tennessee bank, only $4 was given. The situation, of course, was cleverly exploited by crooks issuing counterfeit bills in other banks. $10, 1862. The Civil War was the next step in the development of paper money. Bills were printed in huge quantities to support the soldiers. The states that seceded from the Union began issuing their own, new currencies. Just at that time the dollar began to acquire its specific design, two-color printing and an ornamental border were used. $10, 1862, Union. In 1862, a $50 million money printing act was signed into law. This money was to be fully backed by government securities. But their existence was short-lived. A year later they were taken out of circulation. $10, greenback. At the end of the war, the nation's financial system entered a new stage of history that has been dubbed the Golden Age of banknote design. In addition to greenbacks, silver certificates were issued. These could be exchanged for silver coins and bars. Banknotes with Martha Washington, 1886. The year 1886 is remembered for the issuance of a banknote, which depicted the First Lady of the country, Martha Washington. Silver certificate, 1892. In 1892, an educational series of banknotes was issued to commemorate the World's Fair. These bills were considered the most beautiful in the history of United States money development. The $1 bill depicts Columbia pointing her finger at the Washington Monument. The banknotes were created using a huge number of intricate artistic elements that made them so popular. Silver certificate, 1896. Martha and George Washington are pictured here. Note the angels looking to the sides. Silver certificate for $5, 1896. This bill depicts the allegorical scene known as electricity presenting light to the world. The image demonstrates America's leadership in technological advancement. Silver certificate $5, 1899. Silver certificates gave the bills beautiful edges and strong portraits. In addition to silver certificates, gold certificates were also issued, sometimes reaching a value of $10,000. These bills were in circulation until 1933, when President Roosevelt banned the accumulation of gold by individuals. $500 gold certificate, 1865. The federal government began issuing gold certificates a few years before silver certificates, but they were not as popular. The earliest series of gold certificates appeared in 1865 and were only issued in large denominations. George Washington on the gold certificate, 1905. In the early years of the 20th century, Americans saw a new, yet very familiar bill design. This time 3 colors were used. The 1905 money turned out so brightly colored that it became widely known as the Technicolor series. $1,000 gold certificate reverse. The front side of this bill featured a picture of Alexander Hamilton. The government continued to print gold certificates until 1934. $100, 1914. The design changed again when Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. The obverse featured portraits of the late presidents, and the primary colors became black, red, and blue. This design survived most of the 20th century. $5, 1914. The backs of banknotes depicted iconic moments in American history. This Federal Reserve $5 bill illustrates the struggles and problems of early American settlers. $10,000, 1934. Seeing a man who has never been president on a United States banknote is odd, but Simon Chase was the exception to the rule. Chase was Secretary of the State Treasury under Abraham Lincoln. He also suggested that the famous "In God We Trust" inscription, which became the United States motto in 1956, be placed on the money. The bills were issued in denominations of $10,000, $5,000, $1,000, and $500. These days, the largest United States bill is $100. This is said to be done to discourage drug trafficking. $100, 1996. The iconic redesign happened in 1996. The size of the bills changed too, with the $5, $10, $20, $50, and $100 making an appearance. The portraits of presidents became larger and were slightly off-center. Color-changing ink is used. This is supposed to prevent counterfeiters from doing their dirty work. However, it didn't take long for one Chicago man to get around the obstacle and start printing very high-quality $100 bills right in his basement.
Subscribe to the Cactus Factus channel. There will be many more interesting historical facts ahead.